Chapter 5, Part 1, Newton's third law of motion. We mentioned before, what is a force? We said that a force is simply a push or a pull. Another word to understand is interaction. When we mention the word interaction, we can picture two objects with a pair of forces between them. For example, look at the picture. There's a man pushing with his hand on a wall. You can see in this picture two objects, the man or his hand and the wall. Now those two objects, there's a pair of forces between them. The man is pushing on the wall and the wall is pushing back on the man. That's called an interaction. So interaction means there are two objects with a pair of forces acting on both of them. Another example, a hammer hits a nail. There are two objects in the picture, a hammer and a nail. Now there is a pair of forces in the picture also, because the hammer hits the nail and drives it down, and the nail will hit back the hammer and will stop it. So that's an interaction with two forces in the picture. Here we come to Newton's third law of motion, and it says something like this. Whenever one object exerts a force on a second object, then the second object exerts an equal and opposite force on the first object. Or let's say it in a more famous say, to every action, there is always an opposite and equal reaction. Now, what is the meaning of action and reaction? Really, action and reaction just means two forces. These are the two forces in the interaction. One force is called the action force, the other one is called the reaction force. So those are co-pairs of a single interaction. They always exist together. Neither force exists without the other, and they are equal in value, in strength, and they are opposite in direction. Remember something very important. There are two objects in the picture, and always one force is acting on one object while the other force is acting on the other object. So those two forces, they act on two different objects. Question. A soccer player kicks a ball with 1,500 Newton of force. Now the question is, the ball exerts a reaction force against the player's foot of, so how much is that reaction force? Remember, there's an interaction in this picture. There are two objects, the soccer player, or let's say his foot, and the ball. Now the player hits the ball, and the ball will hit back the player. So if one of the forces is 1,500 Newton, what is the magnitude, the strength of the other force? So what is the answer? Is it somewhat less than 1,500, or is it exactly 1,500, or maybe more than that, or none of the above? What's the answer? The answer is B. It is exactly 1,500 Newton, because according to Newton's third law, action and reaction forces, they are equal in value, in strength. How do I identify action and reaction forces? Well, simply you look at the picture and you identify the two objects. So when action is object A exerts a force on object B, then the reaction is simply force. Object B is exerting a force on object A. So for example, a man is driving a car. Now the tires, they push on the road, and that's the action. The reaction is the road is pushing back on the tire, and that's why the car is moving forward. If you drop an object, a ball, then earth is pulling the ball. That's the action. But then the ball will pull back earth upward. That's the reaction. For a rocket, now the rocket pushes the gas out, so that's the action, and the reaction is gas will push the rocket in the other direction. That's another example. A balloon filled with air. The balloon will recoil upward. Why? Because as the balloon pushes the air downward, air will push back the balloon upward. On the left picture, there is a man, a boxer, hits a massive bag. Now this boxer can hit the massive bag with a large force. But if you look at the picture on the right, the same boxer cannot hit a tissue paper very hard with the same force as on the left picture. Why? Again, the idea is of Newton's third law is that when you push something, it will push you back with the same force. So for the massive bag, it will push back, it will hit back the boxer with the same force the boxer is applying. However, for the tissue paper, the boxer can never hit the tissue paper with a big force because the tissue paper will never hit him back with a bigger force. So he can only hit the tissue paper softly.